Hey everybody, and welcome back. So I am going to talk tonight about Chris Watts and his murdering the children. And as I do that, there's a couple things I want to tell you about. I'm kind of vibing on the how and the why, so I'm going to talk about that. But up front, I just want to remind everybody that we're going to be kind to each other here. It's say what you mean what you say, but don't say it mean. And I want you to really understand in going into this, I'm not bashing anybody. I'm thinking of it as I'm stepping into their point of view. And if I'm in Chris's point of view, it's not going to necessarily be favorable about somebody else. Or if I'm in Nicole K's point of view, it may seem like I'm in defense of it, but think about it. If you're looking at it from their point of view and you're trying to energetically tap into it, it's going to sound that way. So I want to be perfectly clear. Chris Watts is a murderer, and he annihilated his family. And I really feel that that's just baseline. So we all know and agree that, okay? So that said, please remember that I really want you to talk kindly to each other. So try to think about it as if you were talking to a 15-year-old daughter or son, would you tell them they were an F-head? Well, maybe you would, but let's pretend that you're the adult in the room, okay? And let's play nice with each other. So just so you know, it's totally fine to not agree. I love it. And I want your opinions. I want your thoughts. I want your input. I just mean what you say what you mean, and don't say it mean, and we're going to get started. Okay. So I kind of started to put together an across the board, and I'm going to say some things that are going to shock you, particularly from my NK video, but I want to say this. Chris Watts began lusting after NK from the moment he saw her. I know, that sounds shocking, right? Because I was for some people, they were saying, you were feigning her innocence or feigning he didn't notice her. No, they definitely noticed each other, and they were locked in a dance of lust and flirting. And both of them were behaving as though they were in high school. So when people have those level of issues, things start playing out differently. Let's take a look. Like I said, I want to talk about Chris murdering his children. And, because one of the things that I think everyone, and I know this is true for me, I've really studied some different cases and I really love them. It's when I say love, I like this, the human side of why people are doing this, trying to comprehend and wrap my head around what kind of internal madness, what kind of internal lust, demons, what kind of madness is going to drive somebody to that? Because you'll have two people from the same family. One is a murderer and one just goes off and goes to work and has a life. So when we look at that, we have to really step back. And this is how I work and how I am. I step back and I almost energetically put myself behind that person, and I'm kind of viewing things the way they view them. So what I did was I kind of wrote across the board. I put Shanann, NK, and Chris. And I start with notes and then I kind of jump into it. Okay, so we're gonna kind of paddle a little and then we're gonna dive in. So the first thing that I understand and I get is that back in whenever NK and Chris first intersected one another, there were some sparks. I'm not denying that. She knew he was married, not denying that. He had a level of lust for her that was so big, it was intoxicating for her as well. And I think any woman would agree with this statement, that there's really nothing more, I want to say, intoxicating than a man who's really in love with you. Now we can argue that, he's crazy, she's crazy. We can get into that argument. But when we look at the basic thing, the flirt for her was, she had said to her friend Charlotte in texts, I always get the crazies, I always get the marrieds. Well, of course she knew he was married, because that's what she got again, right? So we know that they both knew this. But this, that started as a mild flirt. Now, this is him stopping in the office and seeing her at least 3 days a week. That doesn't mean that they, did anything, but I really feel, and you all know this, come on, we were all in high school. You remember when you couldn't wait to get to school because you wanted to see that other person? This is what childlike, and so when I say naive, and when I was referring to her as being naive, it's kind of like this, girl, you are not in freaking high school. This is the real deal. This man is married, okay? So now we've got these two people that kind of come into connection with each other. And if we look at it that way, they're orbiting, right? Then we have Shanann, who is someone who is a go-getter. And listen, okay, she even admits in some of the texts with her friends, I'm so pushy. He even said the other day, and I'm not quoting her exactly, but she said, I don't even allow him to hang a picture. I've really got to work at that. Even in some of her videos, she recognizes that she has issues to work on. So we know that this is a woman who's aware of that. I'm gonna slide into January 2019, because for me, energetically, that was when things, and I'm not sure what that's about, but I feel like things started to really pick up, where I really feel that, NK said his cheese slid off the cracker way before he met me. And I have to say to all of you, I do think that's true, and I do think she's a catalyst. So please, I know some of you are going, I'm going to type right now, so just wait a minute. Hold on. I'm going to be saying a lot of things that may toss feelings up for you. So I want you to really bear with me and just kind of give me the benefit of this doubt as I'm moving through this. Once you hear what I have to say, if you go, that's fine, but please, don't say, well, you said this, because there's whole pieces to it. And it's very difficult when one thing is drawn out, when that's not really what it is. So let's go back to Chris was experiencing lust. Now here's a guy who's got 2 kids, and you can see, and I in every video, you can see how much he adored his children. I mean, I really want to acknowledge that and say that him murdering these children is like a he's completely shattered, and he knows he shattered his life, even so much in some of the hints, which I'm going to talk about. So let's stay on Chris for a minute. So he meets NK. He's kind of got this excitement about going to school. He's got his children who he has repeatedly says he does adore them. And the issue with Chris is every day, let's look at this. Every day when he brings them home, because he picked them up from school, he brings them home, and they're in the truck, and he says, they're screaming for mommy. They're screaming for mommy. Now, I know that, and I love her channel, Live Abuse Free. She talks about, not narcissism and toxic and all that stuff. And that's not my area, but I pretend and try to quote her, but she's really brilliant. And if you get a chance to watch, do watch her videos. But one of the things I want to say about this is that when we look at his pattern of needing the attention, right? He really didn't get any attention from those girls until he was home and with Shanann in the room. Because if she wasn't there, they were constantly, where's mommy? And if you look at the videos, those are the real moments that Chris is sharing with these girls, and Shanann is taking the videos. So we know that his fun with them has to be, a lot of it has to be around when Shanann's there. Now, that isn't 100% true, because when Shanann went away the weekend of August, I want to say it was the 11th, 12th, and 13th, he was alone with the children. So that was a fact. He did take them to that barbecue, the pool party, which he said he didn't know was a pool party. But these are the kinds of things that we have to look at with Chris Watts. He conveniently forgot things when it would really, I want to say, annoy Shanann. Now, I don't know about you, but sometimes there is that thing where as a woman, sometimes I feel like I'm over capable and I can be bossy. And so I have to watch my own stuff in that regard. And when I look at Chris Watts, he picked her. He kept giving her more and more and more responsibility, because in every relationship, we create a familial relationship. So even though Shanann also had that love, and I want to really acknowledge, I do feel that Ronnie really loved his grandchildren. And I do believe that, I know I said these things in other videos, but if we look at it from Chris's point of view, he had this tight relationship with his dad. And so in a certain sense, his relationship with Shanann and that relationship around his children, he's really going to see some of Ronnie's kindness in Shanann. The issue is that when he starts really seeing Shanann, not just as a mom of one, not just as a mom of two, but going into three, all of a sudden, it's changing the dynamic of his own energy around this relationship and this family. So let's step back for a minute, and we're going to go to April. I'm going to cut to April 2019. Around that time, and this is totally a rumor, but I kind of feel like it's true. There were, and I didn't see it anywhere, but I remember reading it and kind of going, there was a lawyer who came forward and said that Shanann had asked him about divorce and about children and custody. So she's thinking that in April. Now, here's something interesting. In Chris's video, and we know it was a mocked up video that he did for class. It was the video where he talks about what you need to do to make a relationship strong. And I'm sorry, when I think of that, I just kind of go, whoa, dude, really? Because you did everything you're not supposed to do. So if you think about it, Shanann is asking about divorce in April. So what do you think is happening in that time? Well, all I can say is that there's energy swirling in that relationship around her work and the debt. Let's talk about the debt, because I do believe that, men want to be providers. And I feel like he was, again, over his head with Shanann. I think that he was over his head a couple times with her, and especially in the financial area. I'm not blaming her. It's not a fault. We're looking at how perhaps Chris Watts saw it. So if he's looking at that pressure, and that is a pressure that men feel, that, and if a woman looks at a house, right? A woman looks at a house, a man will immediately go, oh, I can't afford her, or, oh, I can afford her. So you have to remember that one of his things is when he invited NK to the house, and remember, she says, wow, that's a great house. It's kind of like, oh, I'm going to have to support her in this level of a home. Now, I want to say that to you because think about this. $2,500 a month for childcare. Now, I know, all right, that Shanann was a full-time worker, and I also feel that because of her illnesses, she really couldn't handle both. She had to work full-time and then take care of her children after work, because I really can see where that would really be an issue. That said, because I don't, I work from home, okay? And so I kind of have that thing of like, and I don't have kids running around. My dogs are enough for me sometimes. So I want to say that because, people think, oh, you work from home, you're doing nothing all day. And it's like, no. So there is a lot into that of how, Chris is feeling that pressure, and there probably was some kind of, I want to say, arguing going on around money, because I'm going to say something here that may surprise you, is that I think Chris, even though he deferred the money to Shanann, I think that in some ways he might have been the partner who was better with money ultimately. Even though he was kind of spending it on stuff, that just shows his teenage side. This is a guy that didn't really grow up. When you look in the closet, and if you go to one of the videos where, and I think it's the first video where he's in the closet with the cops, and he's standing there, and you could see his row of clothing. I've never seen a man having so many t-shirts. You know, people were saying Shanann bought so much, and I was like, wow, he sure has a lot. So there was definitely spending issues, pressure on him. Also pressure, the amount of money going out. They were behind in their homeowners dues, and NK just sees, ding, 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 wow, look at all this he's got. Now I want to say this, around May, now if you watch the video with Chris, around May he turns around and he says he wants a boy. So Shanann, I want to say maybe in April, he is probably, I don't want to say they were having difficulty in the marriage, but Shanann was very intuitive, and I think she was doing whatever it was going to take to keep him in the relationship. Now, he had said on that video he did for school, and by the way, it's on YouTube, the original video that he did, she commented on that video saying, good job, Chris. So she saw that too. And here's something I say when I'm working with people and intuitive stuff. I say, let your brain go, because you already heard it. And we're not going to hear with our brain intuitive information. So she already heard in that video how hard Chris was going to work. And he also says sometimes a baby can help save a marriage. Now we know anybody who has had children or anybody who knows any common sense, you are going to know children do not save a marriage. They put pressure on it. Now people can stay because of the children. That's different. But having another child to save the marriage does not seem logical with what we know in this day and age. Okay. But she saw that video years ago, 8 years ago, whenever he did it. I think it was in 2012. So yeah, like 7, 8 years ago. Anyway, she saw that video. She commented on that video. She knew that he somewhere wanted a boy. He probably said, boy, you know, it's great to have girls, but I'd really like a boy. You know, I feel like I'm ganged up on. Now think about that. Guys say that, you know, guys say stuff. Listen, we all say things to each other. You know, you girls are ganging up on me. I wish there was a boy around to, you know. And I think that also shows the symbiotic relationship between Chris and his father. And when he was pulled apart from his father, we know that Ronnie was suddenly doing, you know, drinking heavily and having a problem with drugs and alcohol when Chris left home. So there was something where those two bonded very strongly. And it was the, I want to say the comfort that Chris had, because Ronnie and he were kind of like the united force in their family. And then when we look at Cindy and the daughter, they're so much alike. And so there's kind of like that, you know, that simpatico with these two. So I'm sure that Chris said at some point, I really wanted a boy. Now, even if it's in passing, I mean, parents say it all the time. You know, I remember my dad saying, yeah, you were a girl. I'm like, mm-hmm. And remember, girls are karma for guys. My dad be like, oh, yeah. So the idea is that those relationships later in life, the father-daughter, becomes extremely powerful. And it may not be when they're younger, but you have to also look at the fact that Chris did not see that lens. He never really understood the strength between the father and the daughter, because I'm going out on a little bit of a limb here, but it's because Cindy had such a strong relationship with her daughter that my guess is that she scooped up a lot of that relationship between Ronnie and his daughter. So I'm just putting it out there like that. So typically, all right, a father-daughter relationship is extremely powerful, just like mother-son. I don't want to minimize that, but I'm talking about Chris Watts. So here we have Chris, who probably said that. You know, people say all kinds of things in Pillow Talk. That's why I said that about NK, because it's like, you don't know what he's saying to her, right? Now, he probably said, you know, a baby, it would be great to have a boy. And she said, yeah, let's try. Now, remember, we know that they had fertility treatments for the other 2 children. This is kind of like, you know, people were saying, oh yeah, they're fertility treatments. I'm like, what? So we don't know, I don't really know what kind they were doing. But here's something, when he comes in, right, and everybody's seen that video where he walks in kind of like this strange scarecrow, you know, kind of like, it was staged probably. She probably went, go out, go out, go out. Or probably she had her, you know, her camera on, which he knows is always on. And she's like, come in, I have a surprise for you when you get home. And he walks in kind of like a, uh-oh, what's it gonna be? And trying to be cute. And then she hands him the pregnancy test. What guy says, oh, it's pink, does that mean it's a girl? It's a plus, you're just pregnant, right? I don't know, like maybe, I don't think guys are that out of it, but this is a guy who had, this would be his 3rd. Wouldn't you know what a pregnancy test looks like? And so immediately when he says, oh, it's a girl, and she says, no, and he goes, well, I guess when you want something, it happens. Now, I know that people have interpreted this on both sides. When I step into the energy of Chris Watts, I feel, and this is the feeling I get when I'm around that energy, I really feel he was like, she gets everything she wants. Whatever Shanann wants, Shanann gets. And I think that it began to crowd him out. Now, clearly, that's not, you know, I'm not trying to judge Shanann. I'm trying to say from his point of view. So if he's saying it like that, if he's saying it like that, then what I would say to you is that there was a wave, there was a repercussion. And I'm going to say something here that may kind of come as a surprise, which is that they conceived that child sometime in May. And around that time was the time he was going to the park with Nicole Kissinger and I almost said Kidman, no. Nicole Kissinger, and they were having their talks in the park. Now, I want to say that, you know, a lot happens in 6 weeks. I mean, Shanann went from hearing him say, I want to have another baby, and saying, okay, and then she got pregnant like that. So let's look at it both ways. He looks at that and says, wow, I guess when you make your decision, you get what you want. How exciting. Is that the reaction that would have brought about the relationship with Nicole and NK? Let's think about this for a minute. If you really step into him and you really look at, wow, I guess when you want something, you get it. that energy started to snowball because he's already in complete lust around NK. He's already had talks in the park with her, and we don't really know when they kissed. It might have been in June. Now, if he took it as, wow, we get what we want, then we're kind of like saying, well, wait a minute, you know, that completely makes him blameless for the flirt with NK. I'm going to tell you something, 2 to tango. Now, I can look great tangoing by myself, maybe, but, you know, there's nothing like 2 people tangoing. Those 2 were dancing a dance already. So whether they were doing the sheet dance or the dance in the park, I don't know. You know, I really do believe that they didn't start sleeping together until the end of June. And I really have a sense that let's take a look at that. I'm just going to say, let's take a look at that pregnancy test one more time, right, as a temperature gauge. And he's looking at that as, uh-oh. Because he is already in his mind in this lust thing, and all he wants to do is get time with NK. Now, they're having problems because Shanann is already going away for 6 weeks to visit her family and his family. So she's already in a trial separation. Guess what I sense he told MK? We're separating. Because we know that somewhere along the line, he did tell her that. And he admits that with the cops. And he said, well, yeah, you know, and then I want you to think about this. If you're in this person's shoes, and we know it was, listen, don't get into the, I wouldn't do that, all right? Because I get that. Neither would I. But when we look at it that way, he's saying to her, listen, this is our trial separation. She and I are figuring out how it's going to work out when she leaves so that we can get the papers filed and everything definite. And when, by the time she gets back, I want to have another place to live, right? So when he feeds that into her, the Barracuda is on the move, all right? So I am not, notice I am not defending her actions here. I think she's a lot of things, but I have to be honest and say to you, I do not believe she killed those children or Shanann. And when I say those children, I mean, Bella and Cece. Now, something else that I want to point out is he makes the point of saying, well, Bella is a lot like me, sweet, gentle, smothering, right? Smother mother. If we look at, you know, the way we can see that relationship between he and his mother a little bit. So he's saying that Bella is like him. And Cece, fly by the seat, jumping off the couch. She has two things. It's go and sleep. He's describing Shanann. He's describing with some angst. And I even saw it. I energetically saw it too, and it's there. When he's describing Cece, he's really not that thrilled. So he even says, well, the first kid, I made a lot of mistakes, i.e., she's a lot like me. But the second kid, I kind of had it down. So what did he mean by that? Well, energetically, if I look at it that way, he's saying he became a better parent. However, he can't help the bad genes. He's saying she turned out like Shanann. Now, this kind of leads me along to, I really have to say that he was feeding this whole dialogue to Nicole, which was, and I'm sorry, I don't want to confuse the Nicoles, so I'm going to say NK. He was feeding her. I'm leaving her. Listen, the minute he got some of that booty, all right, the minute, and he'd been eyeing that body from day one, okay? So I'm not going to deny that he was like, and that she's going, wagging her tail. You know, like her little tail going up in the air. So I want to say that there was flirting going on. And I'm going to guarantee, he said to her, I'm going to leave my wife. And she then Googles, do men leave their wife for their mistress? And you know, sometimes they do. Sometimes they don't. But rarely, rarely would, and this is just my own sense of it, rarely have I seen a man kill his family to go be with his mistress like this, and particularly the children. So I'm going to ease into that because it's been the hardest thing for me to feel into. And, you know, I want to say that it has to do also with my own work. I don't really like to feel into the mind of a killer because it makes me nauseous and it's really difficult. And that can be also why when you look at a cop interrogating, he's not saying, you know, hey, whore, you know, he's totally neutral. And so what happened next? And so what happened next? And he has to look at the victimology. And that was where I started when I was looking at a different case, at Jodi Arias. But in this particular case, we have to look at the victimology. We have to look at that a little bit so that we can see his relationship to his wife. And I am going to say something that may shock you. I think that Shanann represented everything to Chris that he wasn't. I think that he saw her initially as being weak and helpless, and he didn't see himself that way initially. And as she started to get strong because of, as she said, his love, he resented her more and more and more. And Shanann could not get traction. The more she tried to bring him in, you know, everything she tried to do, like, and Chris is doing this. And it's like, I'm going to tell you something. I have seen so many women that she was not browbeating him. He was revealing who he was. Think about this. There's a difference. I'm thinking now of that video where she was dying, where she was putting the mask on him. And he is just like, she drops something and he just watches her. I felt from him resentment toward her. I didn't feel as much of she's bossing him, but I think she was trying not to. And the problem is when you're trying not to be bossy, sometimes you could end up feeding into someone's hatred even more because you're stepping around what you know is bothering them. So Chris, at this point, he's already looking at her and going, she's bossy. She insists on, you know, this school for these kids. We're behind in payments. And yet he's saying, oh, she handles the money. I'm bad with money. Really? Because she's saying he's so great. He is just such a great husband. And I'm going, really? So the two of them were endowing each other with qualities that may have been questionable. Now, is that wrong? No, it's kind of a way for people who perhaps have less of a in other words, their compatibility is going down. So they're desperately trying to complement one another, thinking that they can cover up what's really going on. And in my estimation, and what I can feel into, is that he was really, really resenting her. The more independent she became, the more strong she became, the more independent she became in that sense. Now, let's look at another thing, that wedding photo. And believe me, I will get to the children. That's the point of this. It's just very painful. And this is important information because that wedding photo where she's laughing and leaning forward and he's behind her going, and it's just like there's this eeriness in his eyes. Now I want to look at this for a minute and I want to tell you that I don't know. I mean, my father, if he was alive, I don't think my father would, like, he would crawl over glass to get to my wedding. And I want to say that to you. You know, I don't know a mother who loves her son. I mean, no matter who they're, I mean, you know, really, even just showing up. I don't really understand that. She shows up for his, to turn to him and say, I forgive you. How lovely. But she doesn't turn to him and say, I'm going to come to your wedding, even though I don't support your choice. In other words, that's not unconditional love. It's love based on a condition of what I'm thinking you're doing. So I really want to say that I think that we're talking about something that's super important here, even if you may not see it in the moment. I really want to acknowledge and say that that's very painful. He had to have been thinking about that all day. He had to be thinking about that at his wedding. Whoa. I mean, his mother's not there. His father, who he adored, is not going to it. So that has to be painful for Chris. And when we're looking at it that way, he's already been hearing she's evil, she's this, she's that. And he's just seeing someone who's like flamboyant and everything he's not. She's loving, she's caring, she comes across as this caring person. And by the way, Shanann was. Look how many friends she had. And everybody, oh yeah, that's Shanann. She's bossy, you know. But everybody loved her. So when you look at that, you're really looking at, you know, he was attracted to that light. He was attracted to her light. And slowly, he couldn't live with the light, because when you live with somebody who is everything that you don't think you are, it becomes painful. Now, cut to NK. So now we're in April, May. He's starting to really kind of like get attracted to this woman. He's not wearing his wedding ring at work, right? Now we know that's a dangerous field, blah, 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 but he's not wearing his wedding ring, okay? She mentioned that. But perhaps in those talks out in the park, he's telling her, well, I don't wear it anymore. We're kind of separating. It's not working. And as he's telling her this, and he's starting to, you know, reel in NK, who was reelable, all right, because she's in lust. He's in lust. These two are so attracted to each other. It's like meteors on a I want to say a collision course, because while people go, oh, it's her fault. But the thing is that she wasn't adult enough, nor was he, to kind of go, you're married, dude. Like when you're divorced and that's separate, come see me. This is not in her, you know, bag of tricks. So he is now thinking, I'm reeling her in. I'm so attracted to this woman. I guarantee that as he was having sex with Shanann, he is imagining having sex with NK. So this baby gets made. This comes out. He's like, what? And notice how he's leaning backwards and walking really oddly. I don't care what you say. That to me, and when he goes, well, I guess when you want it, it happens. And I'm looking at it as if he really was like, wow, I wanted this. It's happened. Wow. He would have immediately said to NK, hey, listen, my wife's pregnant. We're having a baby. This is not, you know, now there are those who go, yeah, but Nicole, you know, NK was this. All right, but let's stay in his point of view. He finds out Shanann's pregnant, but he's already, I want to say he stepped over and he's gone into an emotional affair. And, you know, I can't tell you how many people say, well, we're just flirting. And I'm like, that's an emotional affair. You are cheating on your partner. And they're like, I don't, you know, let me put it this way to you. If your partner was just flirting like that, how would you feel? And they were like, that wouldn't be right. Bingo, okay? So, and I just want to say this has a lot to do with how we're behaving today. So be kinder to each other, right? Kind also means, you know, I made a post, somebody said to me, made a nasty, and I said, listen, don't ever, my father used to say this, don't ever confuse kindness for weakness. That's where you're wrong. It takes a lot of strength. It takes a lot of kindness to say, no, this isn't right. I'm really sorry, NK, that I led you on. But no, this was a boy who was not going to be denied. So he finds out his wife is pregnant, and we're progressing along here. Now, June, we know that he's coming home. He's going to the park with NK. What is he telling Shanann? We don't know. We don't know what he's saying to her because he's coming home. He's going to the park. Maybe he's even leaving work a little early, going to the park, meeting her. We don't know when these meetings were taking place. We only know that they were in the park, and he did say he kissed her in the park. So we want to get that set. So at this point, he is also, not only is he like wanting out of this marriage because it's like crushing him, right? Emotionally and everything else. I'm looking at this energetically and going, he loves his kids. I do believe that these children, as he said, they were the light of my life. They were the only lights he had. I know, why'd he kill him? However, NK says, and I guarantee she knew Shanann was pregnant the hour Shanann put it up on her Facebook, because we know that NK was looking at it. I know, well, you said this in the other video. I know, but I've also grown from other comments that I've made, and I've also made new decisions going forward. So some of the things that I've kind of come to, and especially as I'm looking at it from Chris's point of view, have to do with the fact that she said, hey, dude, your wife is pregnant. Like, what are you doing? And he said, I wasn't going to say this, but why? It's not mine. It's a guy named Chris, but it isn't me. Somewhere in all the paperwork, it was kind of like he insinuated the guy was named Chris, because then when Shanann is saying, Chris and I are having a baby, and Chris and I, he can say this to her. Now, honestly, I know. It's like, really? I think in this case, I think maybe she believed it because it was convenient to believe. However, I think this is true for all of us too. If you tell something where someone goes, what? But then you tell something where people go, oh, that's crazy. And then you find out it's true. You kind of go, oh, maybe they were telling the truth about the other thing. See, innocent until proven guilty. And that, unfortunately, most normal people will go into a relationship and kind of go, oh, green light, red flag. Now, he probably said to her, my wife and I are separating, she's leaving. And right after she finds out that Shanann's pregnant, she finds out it's not Chris's, and she's got proof because Shanann's going away for 5 or 6 weeks. So she can buy into it in any way she wants and say, well, they are separating. And then he can say, well, I've really, we're going to have to sell the house because we can't keep the house. She can't. And even Chris says she can't afford it by herself. And Kay is thinking, oh, so if he and I get together, we can have a house like that. And she probably somewhere in there, and this is where he's thinking, she's saying, I really want to be the first with somebody. I really want something that's a first. Well, you had the first with anal sex with them, all right? I mean, there's some like lust that's going on here that is not like, honestly, and he even said it in the video, why didn't you fall back in love with your wife? Why didn't you? But he just didn't, because his hatred of Shanann went much deeper than anything else, because that was what was really spurring him on. And you can even see it, I think, in some of their vacation things. When I look back, I can see where he's kind of sitting there like a puppet, and he doesn't know how to behave, because he is second fiddle to Shanann. So when Nicole says, I've always been NK says, I've always been second fiddle, he says, we're going to have a lot of firsts. Now, let's move along. He goes to North Carolina, but I want to tell you, I believe that somewhere in those 5 weeks when they were having this crazy cuckoo, hot sex, and she came into his house and says, wow, he hid the pictures of his wife. Don't kid yourself. She's not coming in and seeing all the pictures of his wife. She's coming in and seeing pictures of the kids, but she's not seeing pictures of Shanann. He's hid them. So she's coming in the house. She's seeing the house. She's seeing where he's sleeping because he probably had sex with her there. Just saying. And he's kind of getting more and more and more addicted. He even says it. I'm addicted to you. Now, anyone who's been an addict knows you will do anything to get your fix. In this case, he was plotting her death, so much so that he starts behaving like, get away from me, get away from me. And you notice that he's like, get away from me. Oh, I want to talk to you. So he's doing a push me, pull you. I love you, go away. That's a very addiction pattern of like, I love you, go away from me. Because a part of that is, don't let me continue to be attached to you because I'm going to kill you. I am not going to be, and then, but I need to reel my prey in, right? So he needs to be nice to her, and then he has to push her away. And I do believe that he was taunting her, and he enjoyed every minute. Because remember, at this point, he's having crazy ass sex with NK. He's doing all the things he wants to do. He's going to car races. Forgive me if it's the museum. He's doing all these things with her that he's probably never done with Shanann. And he's doing all these things, and he's getting this like juice, and he's so addicted to it that he's thinking that, wow, if I divorce this woman, these kids, I can't just get rid of this woman. I can't get her out of my life because, in other words, he would never be able to afford NK. He would never be able to afford that relationship, because even she says when she helps him look for an apartment, it's like $1,800 a month or whatever. And he's like, oh, like he has no idea of finances. He has no clue as to what it's really going to cost to live his life and support that family. And meanwhile, a third's on the way. And he's trying to push Shanann to upset her to such a degree that she miscarries. I guarantee he was stressing her to the point where she would miscarry Nico. I really feel that any man who tells his wife he does not want the baby, or that we should get rid of it or something, is like it. This is crazy making, okay? So what begins to happen is, I'm going to get closer to that weekend. What does he send her? He sends her a foreboding. He tells her, I'm going to kill you and the kids. He sends her that picture of the doll with remember I said earlier, twisty, with the twister plastic over it. And she says, I don't know what to make of this. She knew what to make of it. She was scared out of her mind. She even says to a friend, I don't feel safe with him. She knew he was up to something. She even sensed there was an affair, because men don't behave like, they don't turn like that, especially someone who's putting on the act of being, he's really in it for the kids. I'm not kidding you at this point. I feel that he recognizes that Shanann, because he hates her so much at this point, because she represents everything he was denied. He was denied this hot sex. He was denied this relationship that he craves and wants. He sees her in the way of his complete sexual and manly fulfillment. I'm not saying it's right, but this is where he's at. So what is his plan? He can't divorce her. Those kids who are already in love with her are going to hate him even more. So he knows at this point he's got to kill her. And I do believe there was a moment in there, like a break of consciousness, when he really got, by sending her that he was getting a rush. Because at this point, he is so in lust with NK, and they just have this thing going. It is just like, crazy sex, ass, butt, whatever you want to call it. They're doing it like all over the place, right? And he is so, think about this. He is so driven. And this is the part where we get to the weekend. He is so driven by, I need that, I need that, I need that. She energetically he is convinced that he cannot go on without NK. And I promise you, I know some of you have said this, I guarantee she was saying, I can't be doing this with you, or we're bad people. See, she says, are we bad people? She's saying to him, listen, we have this thing that's amazeballs, and you need to not be married. Now, what does crazy do? I'm going to tell you that when he was in the room with the detectives. I want to say the CBI. And she is saying to him, she gives him the idea. Remember, she says, well, did Shanann do something to the girls? And then, and I think Ronnie says it too. Forgive me if I'm getting this, because it popped into his head. Now, he knows what happened. See, he's playing it out in his head. He sees putting the girls to bed. He knows what oil does. He knows that it's going to decompose their bodies enough where there are certain things they're not going to be able to find. He's hoping it's just going to destroy their bodies. Now he puts them to bed. Shanann's plane is delayed. It doesn't matter because those girls are in bed. NK has already said to him, I just hate waiting till the kids are in bed. But he puts them in bed. And then they had a FaceTime that night, right? And he called her. But let's back up. I'm really feeling like he went in and he killed them then. I really feel like he was in this frenzy of needing her, needing NK. And they talked during that day. The texts were deleted. And he's probably saying, I need you, I need you, I need you. He's probably saying, I have to have you. I guarantee they were having phone sex. I mean, I'm going to tell you right now, sexting, everything else. I don't know about you, but even if I just had a boyfriend who was indicted for something, I'd be deleting all of those sexting tapes. You don't need to be, So I believe, and I can see he went in, and I do feel that he might have given them something. I feel like even if it was a light powder of something, at 40, 50 pounds, those girls are going to be out quickly if you give them a little bit of oxycodone. You give them a little bit of something, right? And I do sense that they were out. They were asleep. I do think it's very telling that Bella was the one who fought. Meaning Bella is supposedly the one that's most like him. So he kills the child that's most like him. And she fights him because she doesn't want to die. And I don't feel that Cece recognized it was her father. I feel that Bella did. She knew him. And I feel this very powerful sadness of Bella worrying about her sister Cece. And I feel that he knew that those kids could never live if he killed Shanann. In other words, they had to go too in order for him to be with NK. He had to get rid of them. This was his madness, is that I literally see him and I can feel like Bella fighting him. And how interesting is it that he said she was the gentle one, and most like him, she was the mothering one. A mother would fight for her children. There is no way Shanann would have not fought the F out of him if she saw him hurting her kid. There would have been a scene in that house like nothing. And I guarantee, you tell me what you think. If you saw your husband doing something to your child, I guarantee there would be things broken. 911 at the very least. But, now, he kills Bella. But Cece was much easier. I feel he had a lot of feelings in killing Bella. But I feel Cece was his practice for Shanann. Sorry. This is the hardest part. I feel like he went in, and I have to tell you, I really feel that when he smothered Cece, it was like You won't be having tantrums. You won't be screaming loud. You won't be pushing me around. You won't be. I feel like every moment he took the life from Cece he was practicing murdering Shanann. And I do feel that his murder of Bella was much harder on him. I know that sounds like, who cares? But I'm just energetically sharing. I feel that, and this is something I've heard from homicide detectives, there are 3 things you want after you visit a murder scene. And this was from a guy I dated, a homicide detective, a long time ago. Great, interesting person. He said, you want 3 things after you go to the scene of a crime. You want a cigar, you want a steak, and you want to have sex. And, that makes sense to me now, because he just murdered these children. So that 111 minutes that's missing from that video, and not video, from the phone call. Remember there was 111 minutes and NK says, oh, I don't remember. Those 2 were having crazy ass phone sex. And I also want to say that, and I didn't say this part, he was disabling those cameras. I do believe he messed with the cameras. I do believe he thought he turned them off. I do have a sense, and this is totally, nobody said this is totally just a feeling. I could be wrong, so just to say it, I have a feeling that on a funny level, you can't really turn off those cameras the way he thought you could. I know that there was something about, there was gaps, almost 4 or 5 hours in gap in the camera. And I feel that that may have messed him up, because I feel that it just seems odd to me that he broke. And when I say broke, I'm talking about he pleaded guilty, because he wasn't going to, remember there was talk about how he was screaming in the room. I think the cops might have told him, hey, we have the video. It actually recorded you killing your kids. So let's go back to, he's in that room. It's really hard for me, so I'm sorry. It's hard for me to be in that moment. And he's like so caught up in this adrenaline with her. And he's like, he's probably creating a video of it so he can relive it. The point is that he then waits for Shanann. Now, my sense is that she had been really hounding him about turning back on the doorbell. She really wanted to see the baby monitor. I really feel, like be able to see them. When I was little, my dad would come in, and if he had been traveling, he'd be like, hey, baby, I'm home. And he would like hug me, But I have a feeling that he probably said to Shanann, I had a hell of a time getting them to sleep. Please, please. We're only going to be sleeping for a couple hours. Let's, And I have heard from pregnant women who say, there are times when I do sleep with a bra on because my breasts hurt. So, I just want to say that to you, that doesn't, the thing that does surprise me though is Shanann having her makeup on. I have to say that is a bit of a surprise, but it also makes a lot of sense to me that she probably just, I guarantee that she came in the door and they were having that discussion. I mean, I don't think he waited long. I think he was, look at it now this way. He's hyped up. He's killed these kids and he's got a lot to hide from her. Now, the only reason he bought into the order of the story of her killing the kids, is because that's the actual order they were killed in. He actually was able, because when people confess, they kind of stay as close to the truth as they can. They were killed first. By the time Shanann came home, and it makes a lot of sense that he'd be having kooky phone sex with the mistress, because he knew she was 2 hours delayed. After they have all this, he falls asleep. He fell asleep the night they were missing too. I can't even get into it because I have to stay on this. But anyway, she comes in, she drops her bags, and remember that he is now knowing the children are upstairs. He probably gets her to the front door and says, it took me forever. They were like wanting you to come home. They were just missing you. And all the time he's thinking, how can I kill her? She's already 2 hours late. It's kind of moved his plan back. So he's already worried. So all she wants to do is see them on the monitor. So he has them positioned so they look like they're sleeping. He knows how those kids sleep. He probably, if Cece slept on her side, he probably put her on her side with her, oh, isn't she cute? She's in her little position. And if Bella, blue light, they were blue, right? I think that he didn't run in and stop Shanann. I think he ran in and killed Shanann. I think she was just so tired that she probably just took off, her pants, and she said, I just need to lie down for a second. Maybe they had a discussion downstairs and she's like, you know what, Chris, I'm just tired. I don't feel good. I so want to talk to you, but I'm so tired. And she probably just said, let's go upstairs. I need to lie down and I want to see the kids. And that's when he's like, well, it's okay. Lures her upstairs. She lays down after she looks at the monitors, right? She sees the kids. Okay, they're sleeping. He's like, you're going to be waking up in like 3 or 4 hours. Cece will be, bouncing. So just rest right now, baby. And he probably sees her laying there. Now, the thing is, she also, according to the autopsy, she did have a bruise across the side of her face. So, I think he rushed her. Now, does that mean she was laying down and he hit her with something and she, fell? I don't know. But I feel that the way he said she was choking the kids, and I in a rage, I choked her. The thing he says, when he says that word rage, it goes back to the Metallica song. That is the passion he felt for NK. So that rage is the murder rage in which he then kills her. Now he's got the situation with the truck. And don't tell me there were shadows with the truck. That was a doctored video. The original video is what we saw at the neighbor's house that didn't have a shadow on it. And there were other videos that the cops had. Believe me, if they saw her on that video, she'd be hauled in. I don't care what anybody says, all this conspiracy stuff. I think it's really simple. This is really about why he killed these children. And he killed them because he absolutely did not want them to live without him. He was so just beyond selfish, self-involved, in a rage. Think about it. He keeps looking at the children. Oh, my babies, my babies. They will never age. In his mind, he will always see the sweet innocence of them. They will never grow up to be like Shanann. They will never grow up to be like his mother. One thing that NK said, and I know I said this early on, but when she said his cheese slid off the cracker way before he met me. In other words, he was crazy and I was stupid enough not to see it. Now, I've got to tell you, I don't think that, I do think, and this is my feeling, she's one taco shy of a grand buffet, all right? I don't think this woman is like, got it going on 100%. But I really think that she was shocked by what her pushing him brought about. That's right. The pressure from her and his lust for her overtook him. And I know this is going to shock some of you because you're going to be like, what? But I am going to say this. That is, if ever we saw someone invaded with that demon it is 2 commandments broken. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, right? And adultery. Now we know they each committed it. And so, you know what, folks? No good's going to come from that. None. None. And I don't care who you blame, but at the end of the day, he killed his children because he did not want them to grow up. He didn't want them to grow up. He didn't want them to grow up without him. He needed them gone. Because if he was killing Shanann, that was his plan all along, by the way. If he was going to murder Shanann, he would have custody if they never found Shanann. He didn't want those kids to be anything like the woman he murdered. He did not want any reminder. He did not want one scintilla. And he knew if he killed Cece, Bella would never recover. Well, they disappeared, he would tell everyone. They just, and remember he says it's like a ghost town? And it's all about him. Everything's about him. We even said it in that first video. It's all about him. It's a ghost town. Now, I want to tell you, we know he created the frickin' ghost town, but it's also the weight of what he did that does come, you do come down from that over time. And I do see him energetically crying in prison. I do believe that on some level, he's in hell. He put his life in hell. He was possessed. And this is what happens when someone is unstable anyway. So this is my feeling about that. And, you know, I really, if you're vibing with this, if you have some comments, I would love to hear them. I really like hearing different comments. I will honestly say to you, it's like, please don't say stuff mean. You know, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't need to be there. Tell me your opinion. Oh, I think, you know, she did this or he did that. That's fine. Like, it's like totally cool. But I think that when we look at it now this way, I think you can look at also the idea that, you know, this man killed those children because he didn't want them to ever grow up. They always had to stay frozen in his mind in a place that is sweetness, because he killed also the woman that NK is. He was killing a woman. Think about this. Those little girls were going to grow up to be women. What if they became like NK? What if they became like his mother? What if they became like Shanann, mommy? Let me tell you something. This guy was annihilating those little girls because he could never see them grow up. So to me, it brings up a remarkable sadness. And so many people have said this, that I would have adopted them. I'm telling you right now, with no money, I would have found a way to adopt them. And I just feel that the tragedy, because think about this too, you know, if he hadn't gotten caught and the kids lived, he'd have had custody and he'd have seen them grow up. That wasn't going to happen. That wasn't going to happen to him. So we are looking at someone who basically thought he had a better life coming. And maybe in some ways, it is a better life where he is, because he will be tortured mentally for the rest of his life. And the evil that moved into him, I think that was there all along. I think he was set up for this. I think that everything in him was, you know, his hate for Shanann, watching her get better, watching her become someone. So thank you very much. And thank you for being with me during this video. I will be doing more and more and more of these kinds of videos. As you can see, my point of view when I'm with one person shifts. I really would love to hear who you would like me to step into and look at. I'm happy to undertake that. And I am looking forward to the next true crime video with you. Yeah. Thanks, everybody. God bless.